Welcome back to Faith is the Podcast. In a world that often feels chaotic and overwhelming, it's easy to let our emotions kind of get the better of us. But, through faith in Jesus Christ, we are offered a pathway to peace, to that inner stillness that transcends the storms around us. And that's precisely what we're diving into today. Practical techniques for managing anger and cultivating emotional control. Before we get started, a huge thank you to our sponsor, Business Referred. If you're a local business looking to grow, reach out to them at info@businessreferred.com.
Awesome.
Now, I recently came across this YouTube video titled, How to Never Get Angry or Bothered by Anyone Again.
Okay.
Now, I'm naturally a little skeptical,
Right.
but also super curious. Never be bothered. Is that even humanly possible?
It's a bold claim for sure, but what's interesting is that the video doesn't just offer empty promises. It dives into specific techniques, many of which are rooted in established psychological principles.
Okay, interesting. All right, so let's dive into it. The video starts with this concept of self-awareness, catching anger before it takes hold. The speaker uses this analogy of a tiny gap, a brief moment of choice before we react automatically.
Yeah, and that's where mindfulness comes into play. It's about recognizing those subtle signs of anger building up. Maybe your heart starts racing, your jaw clenches, or your thoughts become more critical. That awareness is the first step to breaking free from reactive patterns.
So instead of being swept away by the wave of anger, you're actually noticing the wave forming.
Precisely. And that's incredibly empowering because it gives you a chance to choose a different response.
I like that. Okay, the video then talks about shifting our language. Instead of saying, I am angry, we should say, I feel anger.
Okay.
It seems like a small tweak, and I'm wondering what kind of impact that actually has.
It's subtle but powerful. When you say, I am angry, you're identifying with the emotion, letting it define you.
Right.
But when you say, I feel anger, you're acknowledging it as a temporary state, something you're experiencing rather than something you are.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like creating a little distance between you and the emotion.
Exactly. And that distance is crucial because it gives you space to respond intentionally rather than reactively.
Okay, so we've got self-awareness and language shifts. What else does the video recommend?
Well, it wouldn't be a complete guide to emotional control without mentioning breathing techniques, right? The video specifically highlights the 4-7-8 breath inhale for a count of 4, hold for 7, and exhale for 8.
I've heard of that technique before, but honestly, does it really work? What's the science behind it?
What's fascinating is that this breathing pattern directly impacts your nervous system by slowing down your breath and holding that exhale. You're activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for calming the body down and counteracting that fight or flight response.
So they're basically sending a signal to your brain that it's okay to relax.
Exactly. It's like hitting the pause button on that surge of adrenaline and cortisol that anger triggers.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I'm definitely going to try that next time I feel my temper flaring. So we've talked about self-awareness, language, breathing. Where do we go from there?
The video then goes into this really important concept of perspective shift. It's about challenging that initial, often negative interpretation of a situation.
So for example, instead of thinking, this person just cut me off in traffic because they're a jerk, you might try to think,
Yeah, you might think maybe they're having a bad day or maybe they didn't see me. It's not about excusing bad behavior, but it's about understanding that there's often more to the story than meets the eye.
I can see how that could help de-escalate things internally. If you're not automatically assuming the worst, you're less likely to get fired up in the first place.
Absolutely, and this ties in with the concept of emotional detachment, which the video explains as observing your emotions like a scene in a movie.
So creating that mental separation, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Imagine you're watching a movie and a character is experiencing intense anger. You might feel empathy for them, but you're not getting swept away by their emotions. You're observing, understanding, but maintaining a sense of distance that's emotional detachment.
That's a really helpful visual. It's like you're acknowledging the anger is there, but you're not letting it control you.
Precisely. And that takes practice, of course, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes to navigate challenging situations without getting completely hijacked by your emotions.
And that's where the idea of building mental strength comes in, right? It's like training those emotional regulation muscles.
Exactly. The video talks about how self-discipline and resilience are key components of emotional control. Just like you wouldn't expect to run a marathon without training your physical muscles. You can't expect to manage your emotions effectively without putting in the mental work.
So how do we actually build that mental strength? What does that training look like?
One powerful technique the video highlights is reframing, turning negative situations into learning opportunities, for example. Instead of thinking this person is attacking me, You might think this is a chance to practice staying calm and compassionate.
Reframing sounds great in theory, but isn't it sometimes hard to see the positive in a truly awful situation?
You're absolutely right. It's not about denying the reality of a difficult situation, but it's about looking for those nuggets of wisdom, those opportunities for growth, even amidst the challenges. And sometimes the most powerful reframing is simply recognizing this is a tough moment, but I'm going to choose to remain calm and centered.
It's like finding that inner peace amidst the storm. And speaking of finding peace, the video also talks about the importance of patience and understanding, right?
Yes, it emphasizes the power of the classic count to 10 technique before reacting to a situation.
I have to admit, I sometimes roll my eyes at that advice, but it really is a simple but effective way to create that space for logic to kick in before emotions take over. What other techniques does the video cover?
Well, the video really emphasizes the importance of focusing on personal growth, shifting your energy from reacting to others to investing in yourself.
So it's about saying, hey, I'm not going to waste my time and energy getting caught up in this drama. I've got bigger things to focus on.
Exactly. The video uses this great analogy. It's like you're building your own kingdom brick by brick, and you don't have time to get distracted by the noise coming from the neighbor's yard.
I love that analogy, and it ties in perfectly with the idea of having faith as our foundation. When our focus is on growing closer to God, on becoming more Christ-like, the little annoyances of life just don't seem to matter as much.
That's such a powerful point. It's like when you're walking with the Lord, you've got this inner compass that guides you, that helps you stay on track even when the storms are raging around you.
The video also talks about the importance of setting personal boundaries,
Yep.
right? Recognizing that we don't have to engage with every negative person or situation that comes our way.
Absolutely. Setting boundaries is a crucial part of self-care, of protecting your mental and emotional well-being. It's about recognizing that you have the right to say no to things that drain your energy or don't align with your values.
And it's not selfish to prioritize your own peace.
Not at all. In fact, it's essential when you take care of your own emotional well-being. You're better equipped to show up for others in a healthy and supportive way.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like putting on your own oxygen mask first before helping others.
Exactly. And setting boundaries is a way of honoring yourself and your needs, which is also honoring to God.
The video also emphasizes the importance of understanding our own emotional triggers, right? Those things that tend to set us off.
Yes, self-awareness is key here. It's about identifying those specific people, situations, or even thoughts that tend to provoke a strong emotional response in you. Once you're aware of your triggers, you can start to develop strategies for managing them more effectively.
So, for example, let's say traffic is a major trigger for me, knowing that what kind of strategies could I use?
Well, you could try leaving for appointments a little earlier to avoid rush hour, listening to calming music during your commute, or practicing deep breathing exercises if you start to feel yourself getting tense.
Those are all great ideas, and it's interesting because it's not about avoiding the trigger altogether, but about changing how you respond to it.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that you have a choice in how you react to those triggers. You're not powerless. You have the ability to choose a more peaceful and constructive response.
The video also touches on the power of forgiveness, right? And how holding on to anger and resentment can actually harm us more than the person who wronged us.
Forgiveness is a powerful act of healing, both for ourselves and for our relationships. It doesn't mean condoning the hurtful behavior, but it does mean releasing the grip that anger and resentment have on us.
It's like letting go of that heavy baggage so we can move forward freely.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that forgiveness is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. But even taking small steps towards forgiveness can have a profound impact on our emotional well-being.
Speaking of steps, the video encourages us to take action, to actually apply these techniques in our daily lives.
Absolutely. Knowledge is only powerful when it's put into practice. So the video challenges viewers to choose one technique that resonates with them and commit to practicing it consistently for a week just to see what happens.
I love that challenge. It's about taking those small steps, making those incremental changes that lead to lasting transformation.
And it's important to be patient with ourselves. Change takes time. We're not going to become masters of emotional control overnight, but with consistent effort and faith as our guide, we can absolutely cultivate greater peace and joy in our lives.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Right?
Right.
Absolutely. It's about showing up each day with a willingness to learn, to grow, and to become more like the person God created us to be.
You know, as we're talking about all these techniques, I'm realizing that it's not just about suppressing our emotions or pretending we don't feel anger or frustration. It's about learning to manage those emotions in a healthy and constructive way.
You've hit the nail on the head. The video emphasizes that the goal isn't to become emotionless robots. It's about developing the skills to navigate the full spectrum of human emotions with wisdom and grace.
And isn't that what faith is all about, too? It's not about pretending life is always sunshine and roses. It's about finding that strength and resilience to face challenges with courage and hope, knowing that God is with us every step of the way.
Beautifully said. And, one of the most powerful techniques the video highlights for cultivating that inner strength is the practice of gratitude.
Oh, gratitude. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah.
But how does gratitude tie into managing anger and staying calm?
What's fascinating is that when we intentionally focus on what we're grateful for, it shifts our perspective from a place of lack or negativity to a place of abundance and appreciation. And that shift in perspective can have a profound impact on our emotional state.
So instead of dwelling on what's making me angry, I might try to think about things I'm grateful for in that moment.
Exactly. Even in challenging situations, there's always something to be grateful for: our health, our loved ones, a beautiful sunset, a kind gesture from a stranger. Those little sparks of gratitude can help extinguish the flames of anger and frustration.
It's like choosing to focus on the light instead of the darkness.
Exactly. And, the video also talks about the importance of surrounding ourselves with positive influences, people who uplift us, inspire us, and encourage our growth.
That's so important. The people we spend time with have a huge impact on our mindset and our well-being. It's like that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
And if we want to cultivate peace and joy in our lives, it's essential to surround ourselves with people who embody those qualities.
So it's about choosing to be in community with people who support our journey of faith and who help us become the best versions of ourselves.
Precisely. And, as we wrap up our deep dive into this video, I'm struck by how all these techniques, self-awareness language, shifts breathing exercises, perspective shifts gratitude, and surrounding ourselves with positive influences ultimately point us back to the core teachings of Jesus.
It's about love,
Hmm.
compassion, forgiveness, self-control, and choosing faith over fear.
Beautifully said. And ultimately, it's about finding that peace that surpasses all understanding, that inner peace that comes from knowing we are loved and cherished by God.
And on that note, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into emotional mastery. Remember, the journey to inner peace is a lifelong one, but with faith as our guide, we can navigate any challenge with grace and strength.
And as you go about your day, we encourage you to ask yourself, what's one small step you can take today to practice emotional control, to cultivate inner peace, and to become more like the person God created you to be?
Thank you for listening to Faith is the Podcast.